In the last quarter, India grew at just 5.4%. That's a two-year low.
Growth in GDP coming at a near two-year low of 5.4%. This is significantly slower than the 7% growth the RBI had predicted.
It's a shocker. At 5.4%, even the lowest respondent in our poll did not have a number lower than 6.3%.
The year 2024 was indeed a roller coaster for the Indian economy, marked by a sharp slowdown in the second quarter, rising unemployment, persistent inequality, fluctuating inflation, and tough monetary policy decisions by the Reserve Bank of India. While there were pockets of progress, the broader economic narrative remained one of challenge and resilience. India's GDP growth for Q2 2024 fell to 5.4%, its lowest in 2 years, as weak manufacturing output, subdued private consumption, and global economic headwinds weighed heavily on growth. Economists have pointed to declining corporate profits, widespread wage cuts, and inflationary pressures as key contributors to this downturn. While the government increased spending on infrastructure to mitigate the slowdown, the impact was muted, with many sectors falling to regain pre-pandemic momentum.
बेरोजगारी आज के दिन देश का सबसे बड़ा मुद्दा बन चुका है.
A new report is out by the International Labour Organization, or ILO. It talks about employment in India, or the lack of it. It says a large number of Indian youth are out of work.
Today, the biggest short-term issue is jobs. We need a short-term plan to create many more jobs. If you talk about failings, this has been the most important failing over the last 15 years.
In 2024, unemployment remained a key concern, particularly in urban areas, where inflation added to the woes of the middle and lower income families. According to the Center for Monitoring the Indian Economy, CMIE, India's unemployment rate averaged 8.2% in 2024, with urban youth unemployment climbing to 14.5% in the second quarter. The manufacturing and services sectors, which are crucial for job creation, showed little promise as hiring activity stagnated. Modi government's economic survey 2023 to 2024 highlighted the need for India to create nearly 78.51 lakh jobs annually in the non-farm sector to keep pace with its growing workforce, a goal that seems increasingly elusive.
जो टैक्स पेयर है ना, वो चैरिटी कर रहा है देश में, उसको कोई बेनिफिट नहीं मिल रहा. एंड आप मेरे को एक बात बताओ ना, जब आपको पता है कि मैं 10 रुपए कमाऊंगा और 4 रुपए सरकार रख लेगी, 12 महीने में से 5 महीने आप सरकार के लिए काम कर रहे हो. इंडिया में टैक्स इज प्यूनिटिव. इट्स अ पनिशमेंट, इट्स नॉट अ टैक्स. ऑन टॉप ऑफ दिस यू आर पेइंग 18% GST.
The RBI found itself at the center of policy debate in 2024, with inflation remaining above its comfort range of 2 to 6%. For much of the year, the central bank held the repo rate steady at 6.5%, despite mounting calls for a rate cut to stimulate growth. While global factors, including the US Federal Reserve's reluctance to cut rates, played a big role in shaping the RBI's decisions, domestic inflationary pressures left little room for monetary easing. Analysts predict that the RBI's policy stance in early 2025 will depend heavily on whether inflation trends further downward, paving the way for a long-awaited rate cut.
मैडम, भारत में एक मिडिल क्लास जो 1 साल पहले एक वेजिटेरियन थाली 100 रुपए में खाता था, आज वही वेजिटेरियन थाली 152 रुपए की हो गई. टमाटर की कीमत 247% बढ़ गई, आलू की कीमत 180%, लहसुन 128% और तेल, नमक, आटा, मैदा 18%. पहले आम आदमी पॉकेट में पैसा लेके बाजार जाता था और थैली भरकर सामान लाता था, लेकिन अमृत काल में आदमी थैली भरकर पैसा लेके जाता है और पॉकेट में आलू, टमाटर, प्याज लेके घर वापस आता है.
Despite some positive headlines this year, inequality and poverty remain stubborn challenges in India. On one hand, a recent US report made waves by declaring that India has officially eliminated extreme poverty. Sounds like great news, right? But the story doesn't end here. A World Bank study painted a more nuanced picture. It revealed that while the number of Indians living below the poverty line has significantly dropped from a staggering 43.1 crore in 1990 to 12.9 crore today, millions are still struggling to make ends meet. What makes this even more striking is the growing divide between haves and the have-nots. Rising inequality has brought the debate around wealth redistribution back into focus. Some economists believe introducing wealth taxes could help bridge the gap. However, here's the catch. Fiscal constraints and political hurdles have kept such bold ideas on the sidelines. So while progress has been made, the contrast between statistical milestones and ground realities remind us of the work still needed to ensure that growth truly benefits everyone. Now, despite these headwinds, India showcased resilience in certain areas. The government's infrastructure push, bolstered by a capital expenditure of Rs 11 lakh crore, spurred activity in construction and allied sectors. Additionally, the manufacturing of electronics and pharmaceuticals gained traction under the Make in India initiative, with growth rates exceeding 10% in these industries. These bright spots, however, were insufficient to counterbalance the broader economic challenges. As India steps into 2025, economists predict that India's economy will continue to grow, but at a slower pace than expected. The International Monetary Fund has forecast India's GDP growth to be around 6.5% in 2025, down from 6.8% in 2024. To address the challenges facing the economy, policymakers will need to implement targeted measures to boost job creation, control inflation, and reduce inequality. As India navigates these complexities, one thing is very clear. The road ahead will require careful planning, innovative solutions, and a sustained commitment to inclusive growth.
The Indian economy in 2025 is expected to face a critical juncture, with projection indicating a mix of challenges and opportunities. According to the government data, the GDP growth is likely to slow to 6.4% in FY25, down from 8.2% in FY24. This marks the first time in 4 years that India's growth has fallen below 7%. The reduction in government capital expenditure has also added pressures on growth, making the trajectory of recovery a complex one. However, not all forecasts are negative. Despite the slowdown in GDP growth, the World Bank has raised India's growth outlook for FY25 to 7%, up from its previous estimate of 6.6%. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, also highlighted India as the world's fastest growing economy, showcasing its potential to outpace other major economies in the coming years. This contrast in projections underlines the uncertainties in India's economic outlook. While some indicators such as positive consumption are expected to rise, particularly driven by recovery in rural demand, industry growth is anticipated to decrease. Manufacturing and construction are facing challenges due to high input costs and faltering government investments. Nevertheless, agriculture sector is expected to provide a silver lining. With a better than expected kharif output, India's agriculture sector is poised to make positive contribution to the Indian economy. Yet expert cautions that agriculture alone cannot sustain the broader economic growth. It will require concrete effort in other sectors, including industry and services, to ensure a balanced recovery. On a more positive note, India's per capita nominal GDP is set to increase by Rs 35,000 in FY25 compared to FY23, as per the State Bank of India's report. Looking ahead, India will need to navigate a complex fiscal and economic landscape in 2025. Outlook remains mixed, with the possibility of growth picking up in the second half of FY25, provided that investment flows improve and structural issues are addressed. However, the risks from the global factors such as geopolitical instability, climate change, and financial markets volatility remain ever present.